let's open one up. The first one I see here is Journey of the Spirit. So, you said something briefly about the team that came together on Discord. Um, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your real name, Mr. Chicken Rocket.
Peter.
Peter, thanks.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, where did this idea come from? Where did the team come from? How did this take shape?
Do you want me to share my screen or?
Yeah, yeah, please.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. So let's make sure that's all working properly.
I can see it. Yep.
Great. So here's the workspace for it. So the idea came about. We assembled a team last minute out of a bunch of people who all seemed like they had good credentials, and it seemed to work out pretty well for us. The concept of the game was we'd never worked together on anything together before. The concept of the game was a road, and we sat in Photoshop and we talked for like an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, about what we were going to make before we made it, which was a chance for us all to get to know each other and whatnot before we started. The concept of the game is a road, and so we said, well, what other game has you following a road? And the first thing that sprung to mind was Adam Grew's game, Short Hike. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced his name. Yeah, anyway, that's the game with the little bird, and the journey is that you take the little bird and you meet some NPCs and you end up hiking all the way up to the top of a mountain. So pretty much what we did straight away is we figured out, all right, well, we're going to have a road and we're going to go up to the top of a mountain. But the original idea was that the mountain was going to be desolate and going to be a desert. And as you found tiles to found power sources to power up each area, the area would transform from a desert back into a lush environment. So like it'd go from yellow to green, and trees would pop out and all of that sort of thing. And then we started thinking about how much work that was all going to be, and we're like, we're not going to get that done.
24
But we
hours
started
seems.
working on it anyway. But yeah, like, we've got 24 hours to do it. And
That seems like a lot longer in hour 1 and 2 than it does in hour 16 and 17. Where,
I
where,
mean,
the,
we were
sorry,
still just talking 2 hours in. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, what was your question?
uh, where are these trees? Are these models I can find on the toolbox, or are these
These are
secret trees?
recreations of Dev for Hire's personal tree library collection that he has. So we made him start remodeling the assets so that we could use them in the project. I think he's got bored with that and actually just snuck the originals in a few places. So we had to report that when we submitted to the Game Jam thing, saying, "Oh no, we brought in our pre-made assets." But the original goal was to remodel everything.
Yeah, this
Um,
is an interesting topic I want to ask you and the other more experienced Roadblocks developers about. There seems to be a sort of attitude towards this outside of the game jam as well. Like, did you use free models or not? But what's the kind of thinking around reporting this, and how does this affect how they're judged, if that's clear at all? Or what's the motivation to? I mean, I can get there's an aesthetic motivation to kind of want to do it all from scratch. That's kind of cool. What's the thinking around using models versus making them again?
I think it's you should probably personally I think you should probably try and make as much from scratch as you can. Like
Yeah.
all of these tiles were made from scratch. I mixed all the sound effects from scratch. We took an awful lot of stuff out of the toolbox. Like this ruined model for the gate came out of the toolbox. A lot of these particle effects came out of the toolbox. Um, Almost everything in this bamboo section came out of the toolbox, or otherwise we just modeled the things.
Yeah, I just think
So,
it's.
so we figured we were losing points for every asset that we brought in that we didn't hand make for this challenge. But then there was some things like there's some things we just can't hand make, like these materials and stuff that came out of Substance Painter, and I did an export process on that, so we had a nice rock and a nice grass that we could use, and a nice sand down on the beach.
Could you say
Um,
could you say a bit more about the rock? So how did you get that appearance?
oh, okay. There's Substance Painter, which is a really nice. product from. Let me just pop it up. Actually, I have it literally open right now. So, Substance Painter is a tool which allows you to browse different materials, which are designed for procedurally texturing things. But I've got a process set up where I procedurally texture a tiled quad. Then I can just export that, and then I can use it as a tiled material inside of Studio. So, so this so this rock texture is a. If I grab a sphere.
So was this possible before the updates to the custom materials, or this is using that
Oh,
feature?
absolutely not. This is absolutely all custom material stuff.
Cool. Yeah,
You
I
can see
haven't.
our workspace is an absolute mess, by the way. Uh, I thought I created a new part, but I'll make a new one. All right. Was there anything in particular that you wanted me to talk about with this project?
I
Uh,
have a question. So, the team that you worked with, none of you had worked together. Um, how
no.
did like communicating, um, like, did you kind of naturally figure out how you worked best together, or did you kind of set out rules of like how you wanted to work together?
We spent a lot of time talking and working out what we were going to do and how we were going to divide the project up. Like I personally worked on the main puzzle, um, and Dev for Hire was the lead environment artist, and so he did a lot of the sculpting and stuff. But essentially, we all sat in Team Create, and we all sat in Discord for basically the entire duration when we weren't sleeping or taking a break. And it was kind of more like Minecraft creative mode more than anything. Like we're all in the same place. Just if we needed the train to be different, we just grabbed the tools out and sculpted. If we needed stuff moved around, we just plotted it in ourselves. So so once we had a toolkit of all of the parts and stuff that we could use to actually create the world, if you're in part of the world, you just updated it and built it as you wanted. Um, so, for example, like we figured out how to do nice ambient lighting in here because no one wanted to use. Um, we all wanted to use future lighting, but we had to figure out how to make it not the shadows not too black because it gets really black in there if you don't add some soft lighting just to soften it up a bit. Yeah, so that was it. That was the process.
Did you use a particular like game framework of some kind? And if so, how does everyone on the project like work on code which is sort of dependent on how someone else implements some other code? How do you handle that in
There
24
were a
hours?
couple of frameworks used. We stole like Boat Bomber's Windshake module, which is used heavily throughout. I think that's traditional at this point to use that for game jam projects. If you don't use it, yeah. So triplanar mapping is why this material works as well as it does, by the way, because it automatically blends between top and sides.
Sorry,
Um,
could you explain what Windshake is?
Windshake is a module that if you I'll run it and I can just show you in the game.
Oh, is that the just like the white wind trails?
It's the White Wind Trails combined with um, a parts animation tool.
Right.
So
I
just
wouldn't
grab.
think of that as a framework. I guess I meant more like
Oh, the
the
development framework. I threw
like
something together super quickly at like the first 10 minutes of the project. I'll show you what it is. Essentially, like Windshake is why the trees move. Basically, it makes these individual balls on the tree go shuffle, shuffle, and that's what it does. The framework is super simple. It's essentially there's one script on. Okay, well, it's two scripts, but that like client generic here, it's literally just a script that well, some people made some changes to it, but the initial thing is it's essentially looking for a folder called mods, and it goes through and it loads all of the module scripts that are in this folder, and it calls two things on them. It calls setup, which is basically right after it's been registered, and It also calls on welcome, which is essentially after all of the loading has been done for the game, it gets called on them, which is basically could have been called on loaded, but it's like there's some scrappy code we threw together. So that was enough. So basically, any of the modules that anybody needed to make, like let's say the NPC script, that doesn't even do anything, and on loaded. Okay, it doesn't even do anything in this one. That's a poor example. I wrote this. Oh no, it does on welcome. Okay. So essentially once the game's fully loaded, it runs through the proximity prompt service, sets up a render step to correctly set the text size on things, and it does the binding to the user input to get like when you're clicking through the dialogue. But that's basically all we needed, because if you have a module script basically for each system that you need after that, that pretty much covers everything you need.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask a non-technical question? Why participate in a game jam? It's like stressful. You got other things to do.
Frankly, that's a good question. I don't have a good answer for it. I normally like game jams, but 24 hours is pushing it for me. I normally like 4 to 8 hour game jams, because otherwise 24 hours is starting to get to the point where you're pretty much producing an entire week's worth of work in 24 hours. It's like 3 8-hour work days back to back. It's like, that's starting to, or 4 6-hour work days back to back. It's starting to get.
Well, this is probably not your first time though, right?
No, I've participated in probably 30 or 40 game jams at this point.
Not Roblox one specifically, though, I guess.
No, I've only done one other Roblox game jam, but this is my first time being invited to RDC, so it's my first time participating in this one.
Yeah, and this is the first game jam of any kind that I've done, and yeah, I think it was a really interesting experience. I think I would do it again. I think I'm blown away, really, by... I think it's a great illustration of the power of these tools, right? If I think back to myself as like a 10-year-old writing games in BASIC or something, to see the state of this tool for realizing your creative urges in a way that you can interact with other people and share it with them. I think it's a little... I often enjoy looking at past RDC games because it's an illustration of what's great about Roblox, but maybe you don't see if you just go to roblox.com. Or at least it's harder to find. So I definitely value the output of other people participating in game jams. I enjoyed it too. But yeah, I think it... Yeah.
One of the big principles for this that was sort of subconscious was that we didn't build it in a placeholdery way. Like when you're in studio and you're moving about and editing, it looks exactly the same as the game when it's running. There's no... I mean, there's some weather effects and stuff that turn on when you're up on the mountain. But, there was a whole section here we had to cut. We didn't get the red forest done. We're out of time.
Yeah, I saw that through the window.
So we just dug a tunnel. We're like, okay, we're out of time.
I see.
We're just going to skip past it. We're going to go straight up the mountain.
I thought that tunnel was you showing off your gorgeous stone material. I thought that's why
it was lucky. It was lucky, but there was a whole puzzle up here that didn't get done. So we're last second, literally 20 minutes before the deadline, we pulled all the lighting and logic off these pieces and just scattered them about and said, nope, this puzzle's broken.
I see. Yeah, well, if it helps you feel better, when I played through with my son and we walked past these bits and there were the NPCs that didn't say anything, we assumed it was intentional and part of the vibe and so on. So we didn't
we fixed that. We got permission to push a build that has the NPC saying what they wanted to say.
Cool.
They're probably better off not saying anything, to be honest. They're pretty miserable little creatures.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'll do a write-up at some point about what the actual plot was supposed to be, what's happening in this, because it did have a story worked out. We just kind of tried to hint at it without overtly telling you exactly everything that happens.
I thought the effect when you walked into the crystal at the end was really neat. I don't know which of you...
Yeah, those cutscenes really made this much more punchy than than it had any right to be. Originally, we had the temple right up on the top of the peak, and then when we got up on the peak and we looked off to the right, we're like, down there. Hang on, we'll just move it back down a little bit.
Right.
All right, I've taken up enough time, I think.
Yeah, maybe we'll try.
Do
the
we
next
want
one.
to move on to somebody else?
What's
Or I
that?
can answer a couple of questions if anyone has anything.
Any further questions for Peter? What's next on the list, Ethan?
All right. Somebody, did you want to share your game? I know it's really late for you.
Maybe not right now.
Yeah, we'll go to the metauni game jam. So I'll put this
They're
in.
not here because Ethan, you're pretty quiet. I don't know if it's just for me, but
Oh, am I quiet to anybody else?
Yeah, you're quiet to me as well.
Okay.
I think. Well, go ahead, Billy. Yeah, let's go ahead with Super Starway, and then if somebody wants to share something, they can pipe up.
yeah, I think we should have gone first because I didn't like going after Journey of the Spirit.
All right. Yeah, ours is a multiplayer, so we might as well play it while we go see it.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'll share my screen.
Is there a link in code?
Yeah, I'll put it in code too. It's also in the general chat.
Right.
As in the voice chat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I was. Yeah. I think we were definitely still talking about what to do much more than 2 hours after the beginning, right?
Oh, I don't think we started until 6 hours. But that was mostly just a time zone thing.
Right.
So our game, you're driving on these roads in space, and you collect these monopoles, we call them, like orbs, and you shoot them at each other if you base. And if like the driving isn't clear, it's like you have to hold the key for where you want to turn before you actually. And you can also hit a U-turn by pressing S going backwards.
Man,
Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah, I think
fantastic.
the overwhelming majority of this work was in the driving controller and the roads. It turned out really well. I think the driving is so smooth. I'm very happy with how that came out.
I really like that you can loop around the sun for camouflage.
Yeah, it's
Dan, do you want to talk about the sort of brainstorming process? I think that we have some interesting things to share about.
Yeah, that was fun. So I guess I woke up. The game jam started 2 a.m. local time here in Melbourne, and I woke up around 5 or 6, and then we were on Discord chatting about it. And we used Dolly quite extensively. So we were typing in various things into. So Dolly's a generative image modeler using deep learning that OpenAI has released publicly, and both Ethan and myself have signed up for that. So we were typing in a bunch of stuff, trying to come up with ideas. We went backwards and forwards on a bunch of things. Couldn't really decide what we wanted to do. By the way, Billy's dead. I couldn't decide what we wanted to do, but we knew we wanted to do roads with splines, because we've talked about that quite a bit at MetaUni Code seminars, and Ethan's an expert on that kind of thing. He has this library CatROM that's used extensively here and is really great. So we decided that Ethan should build the roads, and do all the hard work, and then it was still unclear what the game was going to be, apart from driving around on the roads in the general setting. That was pretty unclear until I think the evening. So local time here around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. I don't know exactly when the monopoles and stuff were added and there was actual gameplay, but it was relatively late.
I think we did have plenty of ideas for gameplay, but like being our first game jam, and I guess most of us, well, at least Dan and I, are not like really seasoned Roblox developers in any sense. We like would kind of trying to just figure out a game mechanic that we would be capable of creating something that was like fully working in the 24 hours. So the sort of what we were going to make kind of evolved over time, and yeah, it was like once we had something working, and then we could attach like a game mechanic to that. Like if I were to do it again, I would like definitely try and like start with a simple game mechanic, and then I don't know, do some of the brainstorming while we had something to mess around with, because that kind of the point at which we had a working product that we could sort of develop some kind of game mechanic on top of came sort of rather late in the process. So there wasn't a lot of time for like testing or refining. It was kind of just getting something working.
Ethan, do you want to say a bit about how the player controller came together, or what you had to do there? Because I don't think I understand exactly what you did. Or
Yeah, so the controller is, originally I wasn't going to use humanoids, then I realized that was a really bad idea, because it takes a lot of work to not use humanoids. So I yanked some code that I have from one of my other projects, this cockroach game I have. And if you've ever used Luinoid, it's similar to that. It's really just a state machine. And I yanked out most of the states I didn't need. So there's really just one state in the state machine, and it's driving. And so the way the driving works is that in Studio, so I'll actually I'll switch over to Studio now. I'm screen sharing, by the way.
Yep, I'll take the camera over there. Yep.
Okay, so in Studio, we defined the roads as this graph, and we constructed this graph using constraints. So rods.
In your screen sharing Roblox, I don't know if that's in.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're just looping around. You're a sitting duck. Did someone take him out? There we go.
Discord is frozen.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Stop stream. Oh, okay. So that means you never saw any of our dolly images, because when Dan was talking about our dolly stuff.
Oh, yeah. Maybe show those again. Yeah.
Yeah. So this image was I just put in like the road ahead into dolly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went through a bunch of ideas. This one was like bowling with cars and buildings. This was like you're following Google Maps, but it's out to kill you or something. So I'm not really sure. Okay, this was the one that once I saw this, like I knew this is what we were gonna make.
What was the prompt for that one?
It was.
It's in the file name. So car driving on a winding road in outer space, digital art. Yeah.
1980s car.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, having this image was very helpful. Like for me to make something, I have to have a vivid image of it, either in my head or like something I can actually see in order to make it. And so dolly is quickly becoming a staple of my game design process. So that having that image was really great. We wanted to have like a gas station and just some other images.
Yeah, that one's kind of interesting. So we were discussing gameplay mechanics, and I had Dolly open in a window, and I was trying to explain, that you would collect things on one side of the road or the other, and Billy, I didn't explain it very clearly, and Billy didn't follow me, so I just got Dolly to make this image and pasted it in. It's really an interesting tool for communication beyond, also for brainstorming, but even just to illustrate what you're talking about, especially when there's a mechanic involved. It doesn't always work, but yeah, I found this one of the most interesting parts of this experience, using it in a sort of as part of the design process. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll back to studio. So when I was explaining how the roads work, we made this graph out of rods and attachments, and Billy wrote a module that parses the objects like in the data model and converts them into a graph object. And then using the graph object, we create splines for the roads. And so as Dan said, for the splines, I have this module. This took up most of the time, and we were talking for a long time about what kind of what the gameplay should be. Like, we knew we wanted roads, but we're kind of tossing in different puzzle ideas. And I at a certain point, I kind of just left that to Dan, and I knew that we had to get working because this was going to take a long time, and it did take a long time. And I think I spent about 4 hours just like fiddling with spline math, and then realizing that I didn't need to do that, and
Right.
my original solution anyway.
Yeah, there was a very depressed post in Discord at the end of that 4 hours.
Yeah. Something else cool to note is that we used HorseCat to prototype, or to like quickly see the roads. So I have HorseCat open here, and if I turn on HorseCat, you can see the roads. And so you may have seen this used for UI, but you can use it for more than UI. So I can toggle it, and then if I change something about the road, it'll change in real time. Okay, I think things moved since I last saw it. But yeah, if I change something. Oh gosh, I'm not sure. This is too long ago.
Yeah, you can change the color.
Okay, cool. So now the lines are grouped. So yeah, having that to quickly toggle was really great because didn't have to keep running the game, and we could all see it at the same time.
Yeah, it was kind of. I had to fiddle with it a bit because it's definitely not made to like. I kind of hacked it in a way. Usually with that HorseCat plugin, it gives you a target to sort of attach your UI to, and that actually lives inside of like plugin GUI somewhere or in like core GUI. But instead of attaching to that target, which I believe will only show like on your on your computer, I just like parented all the stuff to the workspace, and then it makes the change on everyone's computer because it's team create. And it doesn't like there's no logic to make HorseCat sort of the enabling and disabling of like viewing this road doesn't like synchronize across different people's computers, but I just made the logic so that like it would just clear it and redraw it every time, basically, if someone else had already rendered it. So I was expecting it to like crash and burn, but it kind of still worked out with the team create session.
So another comment.
I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
If you were to do it again, what would you do differently?
I think we would nail the idea from the beginning and keep it within scope.
What does that what does that mean for you? Like, did you go out of scope, or
I think it's more that we never didn't have a good gauge of what we could do in 24 hours, or at least I understood, but I didn't want to like let anybody down, so I just kind of said okay to a lot of ideas.
I was like my expectations going into it was I was like almost certain that like it was gonna go not as planned in some way, or like that like I don't know. I'm not an experienced game developer in any sense, really. So it was really just like giving it a go, hoping to make like something work, and just knowing that there would be a lot of lessons and I would have a lot more context on like how these things go and like how to do it more effectively next time. So I'm not like I'm not disappointed at all with like anything that happened really. It was like just a I just wanted to like see how these things go really.
I think it, in principle, would have been much less stressful to come up with a clear idea from the beginning that was in scope and then execute on it. On the other hand, what happened worked out very well, where Ethan and Billy built these roads and made them work, and we didn't really have gameplay. I mean, I was messing around with these monopoles during the day and sort of thought we'd use them for something. There wasn't really a game until very late in the process, but then the actual mechanic and the way it worked was very much informed by actually playing in this world, right? We put it in, we tweaked it, we put it in, we tweaked it, we tweaked it. The parameters on how fast they go and how much they track the player and so on. It was built around the way it felt to drive around in this thing. Whereas we could have easily come up with a mechanic that, I mean, in that sense, the gameplay was informed by the other stuff in a way that wouldn't have been true if we'd come up with it from the beginning. So that would have been less stressful, but I'm not sure the end result would have necessarily been better.
I think things would have gone like a lot better if none of us had busy lives and didn't have any other commitments that kind of interrupting us throughout the day. Like I think it would be really fun to just sort of be all together as the one team and just have like instant like feedback on every idea and just sort of constantly working on it together. Like that there was a sort of there was a lot of asynchronicity with our team, which is fine. I'm not complaining about it. It's just the nature of things. But yeah, I think that kind of held us back in our ability to develop our idea more and get closer to what we kind of originally envisioned.
Yeah, when you and I were in a call, Billy, things moved a lot quicker.
Mm.
Like for Dan, I never really knew what Dan was up to, but you and I, like we worked on the crafting together a bit, some of the roads together a bit.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that part.
Hey, Jake, did you do Game Jam?
I just joined the call 10 minutes ago. So is this just like a Q&A on the Game Jam? I apologize if that's a bad question.
Yeah, we're just going through each other's game jams and talking about it a bit.
In that case, I was not an RDC attendee.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. Although I did do a few game jams, unrelated. It was fun. I think I like game jams because it's competitive for one thing. I'm a very competitive person, so having a competitive, especially like a 24-hour one where like I was going against other people directly, where I had to like you know beat them in the time and also make a better game. Whereas more confined, I guess, is pretty fun to me because I just very competitive. But I'm not very I'm not very skilled in any of their aspects. I can't model. I can't do anything else. So it was fun to because it kind of forced me to be super creative because it had to be just stuff that I can make with just parts because I don't know how to model. I so that was pretty fun when I did a game jam. But yeah, it'd be I don't know if I'd do one if I went to RDC just because there's a lot of competition. Obviously, got you know you and this will be one of MrChickenRocket and all those guys. So I'd probably just enjoy it and see what other people do because I know that I'd get competitive and be like, oh man, I'm mad that I lost. But yeah,
Yeah. We
It's,
actually laid out 4 rules when we started our game jam. The first rule is you're here to have fun. So, like, if you're going to be hyper competitive and it's going to get in the way of you having a good time with it, probably should bail. You know,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's healthy to do a game jam and then stake your ego on it or anything on it other than just having a crew and having a good time and trying to be inclusive and take everyone's ideas and just try and build something that's fun, that makes the
Yeah.
development process fun for everybody involved.
Yeah, I'm interested in how you feel like game jams, since both of you seem to have done several of them. And I don't know about you, Jake, but I know, Peter, you work in game development. How does it fit into your art more broadly, right? I mean, you do this for a living, or at least it's a large part of, something you take value in. Do you feel like game jams are a way of loosening your muscles a bit, shaking things up, doing something out of your usual routine that sort of pays off in some way? Is it just purely fun? That's also cool. Or do you sense any payoff you get for it more broadly in your game development practice?
Or if I wasn't already doing Roblox development, which is just I'm in a very privileged situation at the moment. What I get to do in Roblox is already very similar to like a year-long game jam. But if I was working commercially in the game sector, game jams provided a huge Steam release for the whole team, because you don't get to make whole games or even the interesting parts of games most of the time when you're working professionally. For example, game jams for a team full of engine programmers is, well, you get to start touching all of the other parts of the system and like get a chance to make some art, get a chance to write some gameplay code, get a chance to really get into all of these things that your specialization doesn't normally let you get to go near. So invaluable for that, absolutely invaluable. We used to get the company to let us, like, pay us to participate in these things, like get sponsored, just for that reason. Because people get into the games industry to make games, but often the job isn't making games. It's, I'm going to make rocks for the next 2 years, or I'm going to work on portal occlusion culling for the next 2 years. It's like you're not really making games in that situation. So it's good to it's good as a big reset and refresh for everybody when that happens.
One thing, I think it's the same mindset of when you're like doing a game and then it's like, you're like, oh man, I want to start a new project with, when you have an idea and you want to do a different game, so as like a side project, and then the side project fizzles out and you're never end up doing it. But in this case, I think it's kind of the same. You're like, oh, I just want to do something different. But since it's a game jam, you have X amount of time to do it. It kind of forces you to finish it, which, to finish a game that you like, a passion project, versus taking months of just doing it and then getting into like forgetting about it, versus a game jam where it's you finish it and you're done for a passion project, is pretty neat as well from my experience.
That totally tracks. It's like it's a big reset, right? Like you get to go
Yeah.
do the fun part of game development for a little while.
On a related note, that's kind of why I'm considering going out of the game development space, because I like Roblox, but I say again, the more it becomes a job, the more it becomes less fun. So I'm kind of heavily considering going out and going more into just the general programming sector once I get my degree, and then all of that, and just having Roblox as a side thing to keep the fun in game development. But just the conversation.
So if you describe your
Alright, should
job,
we
Peter,
get
as
into
a year-long game jam, does that mean you don't sleep for a year?
Oh no. I have a very healthy work-life balance, unless I'm working with the Americans, in which case my sleep schedule gets disrupted.
Yeah, go ahead,
The
Billy. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying we should
Please.
check out Aftermath then to move things along.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so Boat in the chat said he'll be here soon, but in the meantime, we'll check out this one. So I'll put this link somewhere.
Oh, right. Should we look at something else in the meantime? If it this is the game he worked on. You said.
He worked on the game Moving On, different one.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, then we'll do this one now.
This was my personal favorite game from the Game Jam.
Me too.
This is a
Well, who's going to share their
single
screen?
player, right?
Oh, I got it.
Ooh, Aftermath.
Yeah, I was blown away by the level of polish on this. This felt like something I could have downloaded from Steam. you know.
Wow,
Yeah. It definitely prompted me to like. I was like, whoa, I need to reevaluate like what I think is possible in 24 hours. But I do have an understanding that like that you can in a sort of fair way have like at least something prepared beforehand, not like necessarily like a working game of any kind, but like I don't know, assets for something and like you could sort of adapt that to the theme. Um, does that anything like that go on in game jams, or like we were talking before about like the idea of making all the models from scratch? Is it making all the models from scratch on the day, or is it sort of usually acceptable to do things beforehand?
I think if you have hero assets like this little bunny character or primary gameplay mechanic stuff, it's probably better to build it. Probably fairer to not have that built in advance and just shoehorn it into whatever your project is. But I think for
Uh,
world decoration and stuff, it starts to get grayer and grayer if it's just backdrop.
okay.
Well, the bottom line is it's up to the judges. You're allowed to use pre-made assets, but you lose points on the grading rubric. So you just have to kind of balance your pre-made asset usage with your time.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, and not that I really have no knowledge about whether things were used from or were pre-made at all with this game. It's just something that came to mind.
Yeah, it's a question I wanted to ask Zach because I guess I was just so impressed by how much they did in 24 hours. Oh, sorry, Zach being boat bomber. Do you guys prepare? Like,
Oh, we absolutely practiced. We got ready for this. We like spent the weekend in studio together, like prepping and getting used to our workflow as a team to make sure that we could, operate smoothly. We spent time building plugins that would improve the speed and quality of our workflow. Um, so like Daniel, that's LTOP, he created a plugin that communicates with a local host server that you run, kind of like Rojo works, um, and that one lets you search Polyhaven and Ambient CG and all like the texture sites, so that you can find fantastic PBR textures without ever having to leave Studio. You just pop them in; it automatically uploads them to Roblox for you, creates the surface appearance and everything. And that saves so much time when creating photorealistic environments. It's fantastic.
oh, I gotta respect the game.
Mm-hmm. The name of the game is, everybody can make a solid game. Everybody at RDC has that ability. The question is, can they do it in 24 hours? So you really got to be focusing on your speed rather than like, you know, like some people are like really focusing on improving their game design skills, and I'm like, this is not the time for that. Get good at game design before the jam. Focus on getting faster about it.
Oh man, I feel bad because we just barebacked it. We like I know Dev for Hire had a bunch of his tree assets pre-made, but everything else we just kind of did raw.
Rocket,
So,
my man, I am blown away by how much you guys got done as well, especially knowing that you didn't turbo boost your workflows.
Yeah, I think we brought in a couple of modules for like Windshake. We brought in. Thank you very
Of
much for that,
course.
by the way. And I
You're
used my
welcome.
detail module just to make sure that it ran well. But that's literally just
Mm.
that's just distant objects just get deparented from the world. It's 2 pages of code, but that's about it for what I think we stole. I think they might have stolen some stuff for the cutscene cameras too. Well, but I'm not sure of the details of that. I didn't work on that part of it, so I can't speak to it.
interesting.
If you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, which parts of it did you work on?
I did a lot of the terrain sculpting. I did the overall design. Um, I did the ground puzzle mechanic. Like I built the toolkit
What
for
I
that.
thought.
Although I didn't assemble all of the puzzles myself, we built kind of a toolkit. If you cut and paste and stick a tile down somewhere else in the world, it just works. And like if the ends of it are roughly in the right place for something else, so there's no abstraction there. It's literally using world space proximity checks to make sure that the power is working. Um, I did. Oh, what else did I work on? Oh, I did the NPC system, although that was busted, so that was a bit shameful for me that it didn't quite work in the final thing.
What was the I'm forgetting what game was yours? Was
The
it Journey?
Spirit, yeah, Journey of the Spirit.
Oh yeah, that one was I love because I love the Super Mario games, and that reminded me so much of that.
Really?
Like a lot of so
Okay.
like the I'll have to play it again, but like I forgot what the name was, like the orb character you meet at the beginning.
Isn't that a Link, a Legend of Zelda thing, not a Mario thing?
I mean, maybe that's a. I haven't played the Zelda games. That wasn't really my kind of thing. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, and also just remind, yeah, just that, and the fact that they didn't talk. I mean, not that voice acting, but the fact that it was. I'm thinking the best way to describe it. It was just calming, like the soft blues, the puzzle solving. It felt very. I guess you could say Zelda-esque, but just Link, the Mario-esque, where it's a lot of just specifically Mario Galaxy, which is my childhood game.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I loved we love all of that stuff. All of the people who worked on it are huge Nintendo fans. One of the things, one of the challenges. Sorry to interrupt the presentation. Was we decided to build it at night. Like we said, oh, we're going to build it at night. We're going to have the sunrise over the course of the game. Of course, we didn't get around to that, and so the game's dark the entire time we're working on it, which probably cost us about an hour overall, just because we couldn't see what we were doing a lot of the time.
I have a plugin that puts a point light on my team create position so that wherever I go in edit mode, I can see what I'm doing.
Oh my God, we should have installed that.
I didn't want to
Oh
play
yeah,
both game
I
for him.
want to talk about this real quick
Yeah.
before you get the teddy bears. Two
Okay.
things. Number one, you sitting in the lobby this long has exposed us for the frauds we are. People thought that the text that shows up periodically kind of just matched. They thought it was contextual. It's really just cycling through randomly. So if you sit in the lobby the whole time, you'll see these things that just have nothing to do with what you're currently doing. But because people progressed at the pace we expected, we got to time them. Like they run in an order. Like it first just goes, through some things about uh like the mind space, and then about puzzles. But because Ethan was just sitting in the lobby, it started talking about puzzles while he was in the lobby. So I thought that was amusing. I hadn't seen anybody just sit in the lobby for that long before. And so now, if you hit the teddy bear, I'd like you to just bounce back and forth between them while I talk about it for a sec, because this one is super cool. Uh, so Basically, the way this one works is a dolly zoom, so that you get that cool background warping effect for free, essentially, where the camera moves at the same pace as the field of view to keep a certain element feeling the same size in frame. We
Ah, the
stole that
Jaws zoom.
straight out of just like film and cinematography. It's just a bit of math. And as you can see, Ethan's wiggling his camera around here. A lot of people were under the impression that it was a like a forced camera thing, but it's not. You can actually move around, and the effect still works. Mostly, obviously, you could see it just broke there. Um, but basically, as it zooms with that dolly effect, the exposure compensation value in lighting is cranked way up. So if you pay attention to the lamp in the background there, you'll see that part blows out first, which gives this cool effect of like the world being eaten by a white void rather than just like a lightness value. Like if you did a color correction with a brightness thing, the whole thing would evenly spread. That doesn't look as cool. Um, and the way the teddy bear remains is we clone it into a viewport frame. And because the world is becoming a white void anyway, it doesn't matter that viewport frames have no lighting because there's no lighting left. Uh, and so when we transition, we teleport your character from one teddy bear to the other, the one in the lobby to the one in the puzzle area, using just a little bit of math to determine where the teddy bear is in your view, uh, and then do like object space calculations to put you exactly there on the other teddy bear so that it perfectly lines up. The problem is that you can do if you go from behind the teddy bear, you end up in the counter, and that's why if you've noticed, Ethan, you keep getting shoved around weirdly. It's because you're being teleported into a space that is already occupied. Um, but yeah, really impressed with the work that James did on this one. It really sells the effect of like this teddy bear being in the memory. Oh shit! Nicely done.
Wow.
Usually it shoves you sideways, not down. That's good to know. Well,
Speedrunning strat.
I'll rejoin.
that's cool. Well, you perfectly demonstrated the effect because when you clipped out of the map, you could see all the levels in like their separate spatial areas. If you ever wonder why there's trees in the window, part of it is to, environment design, but the other part of it is because you actually just saw it there for a second. Before the mesh of the wall loaded in, you saw those trees. Those are there in another level, I think level 3. Um, because otherwise you could look out the window and see the lobby floating in space. So we just covered it with trees.
Well, do you want to talk about how you came up with this idea? This seemed like you took a very unique approach to the theme.
So we spent probably about an hour and a half brainstorming. Um, we started by saying, okay, what's the gut reaction to this? And let's not do that. The gut reaction was like a driving game with like an infinite road of oncoming obstacles and like a Subway Surfers type game. And we immediately went, okay, let's not do that. How can we take this in a completely opposite direction? Because we like to take it in more artsy and less obvious approaches because it helps us stand out and it keeps it more interesting. Um, we like to do metaphorical interpretations of the theme. If you look at what we've done in past years, it's always been the metaphor rather than the literal. Um, so this year we said, okay, the road ahead is a phrase that metaphorically means, the things that are the path ahead of you, the way your life is going. So how can we take this and turn this into a game? So first we started thinking about themes and motifs that we wanted to stick, and then we designed mechanics around that actually, which isn't always the best way to do game design as a whole, but for a game jam, I find it to be a little better because the mechanics are actually less important in a game jam because theme comes first. But we went and we decided we wanted to be really emotional. Our goal was to make people emotional enough that they would cry, and we did succeed in that. We got messages from people crying, including some of the judges, so that was fantastic. Um, we wanted to have a motif of moving forwards, right? There, it's supposed to be the road ahead, not just like drama, but about moving on. So we literally titled it that. Kind of hit the nail on the head a little too bluntly there, but we picked that name as a placeholder and then never changed it because that's how game jams work. Uh, so we went and we fleshed out the story of okay, so this person is moving on with their life and the road ahead is tough. Where are we going with this? Um, so we decided it should be about moving forward from trauma, um, where the road ahead is a lot more difficult when the road behind slashed your tires. And so we wanted to deal with that in a mature and intimate fashion. So we sculpted this idea of uh, you cope and handle your trauma through a metaphorical representation where your memories are all jumbled up and you have to solve that and like literally resolve these memories by us doing a sliding puzzle. We actually had cut content, sadly, but there was actually plans to have it end with a final level where the path is open and like you can move the bag anywhere you want, representing the road ahead being finally free and you get to choose. But then after that, we were considering having you like be in a therapist's office for the last level, and all you got to do is go to the door because you're no longer trapped. But again, time constraints. Our ending is a little less satisfying since it kind of just stops. We did finish the game 4 minutes before the deadline, so we definitely did not have time for all those. Um, I don't know how many of you saw my Twitter thread, but I did a nice write up about how we presented mature and intense themes within the confines of Roblox and implicit game design. So you can't say your father was abusive, but the tone here can be made clear without that. Like, there's a smashed mirror, thrown around chairs, Bloxy cola cans, the TV's not working right, you're sneaking out in the middle of the night. Like, we imply what's going on without saying it outright. And just like our environment designers, Ashcraft and Homemade Meal, did a fantastic job of making sure that you got the right vibes throughout. And when you beat the puzzle, as I'm sure Ethan is going to figure out soon, um, then when you come back to your Mind Palace Museum area, you actually unlock paintings there. Like the museum gets more full as you progress through the game, and these representations are not random. We did so very carefully. Uh, the art pieces are a really fantastic way to. Sometimes things clip in. You got to move the bag back a little bit. That happens sometimes. Uh, where the art is designed to evoke emotions from you. So we got to use that. Oh wait, go back, go back, go back. I want to show the paintings I'm talking about. Um, yeah, this one there's so many ways to clip in, unfortunately, because it's a crowded apartment. But basically, if you look here, we've got a head full of angry thoughts. We've got very sharp, angular designs. We've got black and white palette. Right, these things all have um, I don't implied meaning in a way that's kind of a universal language where people get the feeling out of this very abstract art that this was like upsetting and not like a colorful, vibrant memory. So these represent the father level, and after you beat the next one, where you're leaving the mother, you could also inspect them. By the way, they say interesting things. James just wrote whatever his first thoughts were on each painting, and it honestly works really well because it gives the game a feeling like a stream of consciousness of the person who's really just they're in their own mind here, right? And so it really works pretty well in terms of story and in terms of time efficiency for a game jam. So yeah, if anyone has anything they want to interject, because I've been
One
talking.
thing, when you mentioned how people correlated the text contextually to where you're at the game, it reminded me a lot of what they did with Stanley Parable. No, I should talk on that. How they just put a bunch of random stuff and people correlate it. We're like, oh, I pushed this button and flipped this thing, and then this happened. When they designed it, I believe not to be like that, and they were just kind of random stuff, and the players themselves kind of linked them. So I think it's kind of similar. Just people, any players, I think, want stuff to link, so they're just kind of, if it any sense it seems contextual, they're going to just assume it is. Which I think that's kind of an example here, which is fun to me. How they were like, oh yeah, this is obviously contextual based text, and it's not random kind of thing.
Yeah, the human mind really just wants to attribute things to other things. It's useful in game design because it lets you cheat a lot and let players fill in the gaps. Less useful in real life, where people start correlating things that have nothing to do with each other. But yeah, in this level, we wanted to give the feeling that the mother had been traumatized by the abusive father's behavior, and while she was good to you, she was also very overprotective. And so the art pieces here are like wildly oversaturated and holding the child very tightly. And yeah, this puzzle was a fun one, actually. I completed this puzzle probably around 300 times over the course of development. I could probably solve it with my eyes closed at this point. Yeah, puzzle games get less fun when you have to do them repeatedly. The effects here for the puzzle mechanic was a very iterative process. Those are obviously beams around the meshes there to highlight what you're looking at. It uses proximity prompts, which is why it's kind of jank. And like sometimes it doesn't capture what you're actually looking at, and it makes it hard to release things, unfortunately. But the time saver of using proximity prompts made it worthwhile rather than implementing a bespoke solution.
Yeah, I would have saved time if I didn't use proximity prompts. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, they definitely cause problems. The game Doors that's been popping off lately, they use proximity prompts in their what do you call it? Their drawer opening for like the desks, and it is the most annoying thing because it never gets it right, and you always keep like opening the drawer on top of the one you tried to open. Yeah. The arrow meshes, I added later on in the process because I realized that it's not clear. Where essentially, yeah, so when that highlights red, it means that it's clipping. That was also another thing I added later on. Sometimes it was impossible to tell what it was hitting. So I just made it glow red around the one you're hitting. There's actually secretly invisible blocks around all of these it's actually doing all the raycasting with. The visual meshes are simply there for funsies. They have no impact on the actual mechanics. It is quite entertaining to watch Ethan attempt this.
I did solve it. I won the game.
Not even close.
Not even close.
I'm going to give you a hint. You're able to move the bookshelf. That's part of the puzzle.
Did that sofa just teleport through the table?
Oh, I reset it.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask, why do you participate in game jams? So you're obviously, it looks like a bit of a celebration of your craft in some way, right? The time constraint. You're obviously extremely competent at this. You seem to get a lot of value out of it, or at least you put a lot of effort into it. Why do you do it?
Why do I do it? Well, initially I did it because it was a lot of fun. It was less fun for me this year. While I'm very proud of what we created, I have to admit that I can't work for 24 hours straight anymore. I'm not 16. I definitely suffered for this one. Oh man, they're really clipping today. I wonder if I think it has to do with your frame rate actually, because it casts per render step. So that's a little unfortunate. But basically, Game Jam is a great way to test yourself. And like I said, we practiced, we prepped. So even if we don't win, we improved the way we work, which is valuable to us regardless of what happens during the Game Jam. It's also, bonding, socializing with my team members, and I also like trophies.
Yeah, good answers. Thanks. I guess we're coming up on over an hour now. Are there more questions for Boat Bomber before we wrap up?
I'd just like to ask. Oh, go on, please.
You had said that you finished the game with 4 minutes to spare. The game is very polished. Did you complete an unpolished version of the game first and then go back and polish, or did you polish as you went?
It did not work until 4 minutes before. You could see it's still kind of a little jank, where sometimes things clip and then you can't move them because it gets stuck. That one, I think you just didn't push the TV all the way to the other corner. If I had more time, I would have made them snap to a grid, so this whole thing would have been solved. But yeah, maybe if we are allowed to update it later, post Game Jam, I'll throw that in. But congratulations on solving it. What did we do in the last 4 minutes? We had to add the entire third puzzle in the last hour, because we had built it in a separate place and didn't bring it in. And because of the way it works, we wanted it such that solving the puzzle would put the furniture into a location that makes sense, like as a room configuration, to represent resolving your memories and making them not a jumbled mess. Porting the build that the environment artist gave me into the puzzle was a lot of manual labor. Because building tooling for this within the Game Jam would just not be worth it. It's only 3 levels, right? But in hindsight, I kind of wish I did, because it's really sucked. I had to manually figure out which piece was supposed to be which block, and then give them their rotation values so that they would connect to the block correctly, because each of these meshes has a different orientation in Blender. But yeah, we did not have a unpolished version and then do polish. We worked on all sorts of things all of the time in a random order, and whatever you had the motivation to do, because you've been working for 18 hours, and if you lose motivation, you're not going to finish at all.
When did you record the video?
After the time limit for building ends, there's an hour for you to submit your video. So we finished at 8:50, 8:56. Then started recording at 9:02. OBS was not playing nicely. My game was running at 144 frames per second, but OBS was recording at 2 frames per second. So I got out my beefier laptop and tried again, and it still wasn't working. So our video was very laggy, but as long as we got the point across to the judges, we'll get to re-record if we're a finalist. So we were like, all right, just send it. Then the survey link wasn't working. where you have to upload the video. It's not like link to a YouTube video. Upload your actual MP4, and we would try to upload, and it would say file size too large, must be smaller than nan. So that was completely busted. So we quickly got in touch with DevRel to be like, hey, what are we supposed to do? We're about to run out of time to submit. Please do not disqualify us because your form doesn't work. And so they said, yeah, no worries. Upload it to YouTube and just put the link to the YouTube video in the game name in the survey form. Yeah. Recording the video during build time doesn't seem like a great use of time to me, because you could be polishing, right? And you'll end up with a better video later of a more polished game.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have read the rules a bit closer. We weren't really properly in the Gilded server, most of us. Like, the verification wasn't working, so for a long time we were just going off on the rumor that there was a game jam, really. But yeah, good to know for next time.
One thing that was a big success for us in working on Journey of the Spirit. By the way, we had no idea what the name of it was going to be until right at the very end. And Dev for Hire says, I've got this idea for a name. Sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Ethan was looking out the window, and despite the tree there, you could still sort of see stuff in the distance.
Yeah. So the name was last second. But one of the things that was really successful for us was Rocky did most of the puzzles, because the way that we put everything together, like the trees and everything, is all of the objects in the world just worked if you placed them. There was no anything that was copy and pasted around would just do its job if you put it to where it needed to be. So if somebody said, I want to go make a puzzle over here, and that's what happened a lot, they just literally had to cut and paste the tiles and make it look like it worked, and then that was enough and it would. So it was lucky that we kind of went with that approach for things, because it meant that it wasn't just a single file.
Worked?
Sorry?
Can you elaborate more on how that worked? Because that's awesome.
Sure, if I can share screen. Hang on, just make sure we have time. Like, is this okay if we get into this now, or did you...
This is more interesting than what we would be doing otherwise. So.
Okay, no problem. I shall share my screen again. All right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so starts with one of these tiles, right? Let me just run the game. Oh, I can't skip the intro quickly, but like if I grab one of these tiles, which is one of the straight pieces, because we made 3 tile pieces: a straight, a T section, and a corner. We grab one of these tiles and I just duplicate it and move it. You can see that it's how it's constructed is there's a glow, which is just this piece of mesh that does the glowy bit, and there's the tile itself, which is another mesh, and then there's a bunch of attachments, and there's 2 attachments on this one on each end, called power. Let me show in constraint details draw on top. You can see that there's an attachment on the corners, like for where the power is coming in and out. And there's another attachment up top, which has just got a light bulb attached to it, so we can turn a light on and off when the tile powers up, just to make it look more glowy. So if you have have these power sources here, you can see that they've just got one attachment down the bottom here called power. So they're just kind of clipping on, and it's just distance checks to see if, like, you loop through and iteratively figure out if the power's on for something, and then once power's changed for things, there's an animation scale where they don't start animating until the thing that they're drawing power from has finished animating. So that's how the power kind of looks like it's flowing through the world. But in reality, the power circuit is all calculated instantly, but it just takes a while for the animation to flow through. And then we said, well, if this is all distance checks, we can start building way more elaborate puzzles than that. So we built this thing, which is this wheel that has a bunch of neon parts stuck on it. And then you can see that it's got 3 different power attachments, like 1 power attachment on each of the little discs. And so any part named neon or named glow was made to animate in or out if the thing. So this wheel is exactly the same as any of the other tiles, as is these little needles, like record player needles. It's just reconfigured it. See, they have a little power attachment here. So when they power on that and you move the disc underneath, they get within 5 studs of each other and start powering each other. So that's really how the whole thing was. So
Fantastic. Do you loop through every single attachment in Workspace, every check?
yeah, that was actually a huge problem. About we were testing each little section of the map as we went, and this was the disaster of the game jam. Actually, about 4 hours or 5 hours, we decided 2 hours before the game jam ended, we were going to do a review and bug fix. So 4 hours before that, we realized the game was getting slower and slower and slower because those checks that I was doing, even though I was only doing them twice a second or something, there's a lot of puzzle pieces and a lot of attachments, and it was getting slower and slower and slower to the point where it was starting to stutter because I was just doing like the most naive possible greedy circuit check on things, right? So within the last couple of hours, I'm already exhausted. I had to basically, where is it? Tile game, one of the modules we wrote. This was the original code, and I tried to debug and debug and debug and figure out why it wasn't quite working properly and why it was so slow. And then I ended up rewriting it like with an hour to go before review, and ended up going over review time by half an hour and had to apologize to everybody. So the trick to why it runs at least decently is right at the start of the game, all of the tiles do a distance check to all of the other tiles in the map, and then just keep a record of like things that are within roughly 50 units of it. So it's like, that'll be good enough. Whereas before it was every tile was checking every tile, and then every attachment was checking every attachment. So
Right. That makes sense. The tiles can't actually like move, they just rotate. So if something's not near it at the start of the game, it's never going to be near it.
Yeah, that was lucky actually, because we wanted to have some more stuff like this, where we wanted to have like more more elaborate puzzles with longer pieces on them. So just as a little, I won't do it here. Just to show you the system a bit in action, we'll have to sit through the cutscene just once. If I grab this thing, and so because I built this system, I built a couple of the puzzles, but Rocky actually built most of them just because the pieces could be cut and pasted around. So all of those really elaborate yellow puzzles that everybody really liked, I didn't make those. Rocky made those because he's like, I've got a toolkit and I'm going to go make something cool. So if I grab these pieces and just stick them here, that's it. That's all you have to do to make it work. There was a little hidden NPC here that not a lot of people found, and then we realized after we shipped that he wasn't actually visible. So it sounds like, you'll see in a second. It's quite a funny Easter egg.
Hey, I recognize my win lines.
Yeah, definitely. And everything's wind shaking. So
Yeah, Death for Hire is one of my favorite examples of like how to use Windshake to its absolute fullest potential. It makes it look
he
so
loves it.
good.
Yeah. His art is phenomenal. The highlight's not working suddenly. What?
Highlight is broken. It's Roblox, not you. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. So
That's. Did they reach out to you about being a finalist yet?
let's talk offline.
Sure. Because A lot of
See,
games relied on
works
highlight,
now.
and that broke. And I feel like it's kind of not really a great way to judge when everybody's game got broken.
Yeah, so you can see now that these pieces just do their thing because they've been placed in. And there's a musical chime that starts escalating when a lot of pieces get turned on at once. We didn't really get any puzzles that did a lot at once, but
The animation looks fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, and there was a little Easter egg here if anyone fiddled around with it. There's a little piece off to the side here. This rock slides up out of the ground, and there was supposed to be a dead robot here on it that you could talk to. He's pretty miserable. Yeah.
So you guys didn't necessarily work on enhancing your workflow prior to the game jam, but the way you designed your puzzle creation tooling is very clearly cognizant of development speed, or being able to just copy paste them and build the puzzle visually and it works.
Yeah. The whole idea
Definitely-
was we wanted it to feel like we all knew we were going to be stuck in Team Create together for the next 20 hours. So we didn't want to build anything that was abstract. Like we didn't want to. You have to go fill out lists of things in scripts. It's like to make these flowers pop out of the ground. There's attributes you put on it. You don't have to go and write a script somewhere to make it do it. You just like tag things up and then they do what they need to do. Same with the gates. Like the gates have well, these are actually puzzle pieces. I never realized that. So these lights that are lighting up on top of the thing, I didn't realize he did it that way. These are actually entire tiles. Yeah, all right. They can be apparently placed vertically. I wonder if I stop them being disabled, we could probably click on them and make them rotate. I'm trying to find these gates. Okay, yeah. So the gates had pretty sure they had value yeah, they had a list of the inputs and the output tiles that like they sent power to. So you could link onto a tile directly, and if you needed to do remote power for things like these. Yeah, and you can see the game just looks like the game. It's not abstract in any way. It's like if it looks right in studio while you're working, we tried to make it look the same and behave the same as it was in studio for when you run it, so you're not constantly having to run it to check your work and see if it's landing the way you wanted it to, which is a hugely powerful benefit of having Roblox Studio be as good as it is for that kind of stuff.
Does your team or any other team like plan on doing any second release? Like, is that a common thing with game jams?
Yeah, everybody wants to resubmit their game and fix all the bugs in it. Everybody knows there's half a dozen broken things that they want to go and fix up. I'm pretty sure. You can contact the judges on Gilded. They gave us permission to push another build yesterday, actually. So we went and did that just to fix up a couple of broken things, like touch wasn't working on mobile, so we just made sure that was working and stuff like that.
I think Billy was maybe asking if you plan to pay more attention to this after the game jam and have it be a
You're
finished
talking about
thing.
like doing like minor bug fixes, but like does it ever happen that like a team is really excited about their game and wants to like make more and more levels?
Maybe.
It's been my experience that every team says they are going to and then never does, because Game Jam really burns you out on that game and you never want to touch it again.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you
what I
get
was
motivation for
gonna say
bugs
too.
because you hate seeing bugs in your game, but when it comes time to make more content for it, you start getting flashbacks to hour 23 and everybody like freaking out as the timer ticks down. You're like, nope, and close it again.
Yeah, nobody loves this game. You know, like we all had our moment of, oh, this is great, this is beautiful. We're really into it, and then it moves on.
Yeah, I actually did update interval, which was our last year's Game Jam. It's now nominated for a Bloxy, which is pretty sweet. But I
Nice.
updated it with VR support because I got a Quest 2 and I wanted to see my prettiest, most immersive environment in the most immersive form factor. So I had motivation to touch it again.
I really wish we had time to go through and do this red section. It was going to be shadow puzzles actually. Like we were going full witness through this section here. Yeah, but we also realized that the shadows just don't work for a lot of users. They turn their graphics quality down, and we're like, oh, we're not opening that can of worms today. So we just stuck with the puzzles as was.
Maybe I'm missing them, but I wish there were a lot more games like this on Roblox. So my son's really into witness and puzzle games in general, and I just haven't found so many on Roblox. Maybe they're there, and I just haven't found them. That's certainly possible, but I don't see a lot of stuff like this. Am I missing some obvious ones? Or?
The
I'm not
problem
a-
is the market on Roblox isn't really interested in this because
Oh, yeah.
Roblox is a social platform and single player puzzle games don't do very well. Like Doors is a puzzle game, sort of. It's like a horror puzzle survival game, but it's very social. Like I've had a blast playing that with my friends, and that's what makes a game successful on Roblox. That's how Doors broke out. And so there's no social element here, so you're never going to see it on the front page, even if it is a fantastic game and would do well on Steam. Roblox players just aren't looking for that. Focus groups have shown that kids care more about who they're playing with than what they're playing. They'd rather play a bad game with their best friend than a good game with nobody.
That's pretty much Roblox's motto, right?
Yeah, human co-experience, bringing the world together through play. All of their mottos throughout the years all center around like social players. The games do exist, though. You're just going to be hard pressed to find them. You'll need somebody to like link them to you because they're never going to surface on their own.
Has anyone made any efforts to like gather those into like one resource?
Not to my knowledge, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do feel like having made some Roblox friends so that this tab with stuff your friends have been playing gets populated is the main way that things that are actually of interest to me come to my attention on Roblox as compared to the front page.
Funnily enough, that's my same experience with Steam. I only play what my friends are playing.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think maybe it's a good time to wrap up. Are there any final comments or questions for those who have shared their games? Seems not. Thanks a lot, everyone. That was
Thanks very much.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.